Is it on? Yeah. All right, guys. How are you? Yay, got a couple of you out there. All right, so what I'm going to talk to you about is just an introduction to 3D. So, you guys have gone around and experienced some of the headsets and some of the, areas of the booths here. And then the question becomes, okay, so how do I start experiencing some of this stuff? And it's also a first pass look at what you might step into as a first-time student at the Art Institute. One thing I'll note is all of the slides, all of the artistic or graphical images that you're seeing in the slides are all current or former student work, which is pretty cool. So, all right. Uses. So 3D uses. Maya is one of the dominant 3D packages in many production houses. It's used for a variety of things. So game asset creation, VR, AR asset creation, film, advertising effects, 3D animation, 2D animation, right? So really the sky's the limit. Most 3D packages are going to share the same capabilities. It's just a matter of, what buttons are you clicking around, right? I tell my students that if you get comfortable enough in one, it's going to be easy enough to step into the next. And what I've discovered in terms of the local industry, it's kind of a split down the middle in terms of who uses what with regard to Maya or 3ds Max. So it is highly beneficial to learn both. Okay. So how do you gain access to this stuff for the first time? A lot of people don't know this, but as a student or an educator, you can actually download Autodesk products for free, which is awesome. No watermarking, right? Now, obviously, you're not going to want to go out and try to use this for professional work, paid work. There's big licensing issues with that. But you still have access as a student to test out all of the features and get a really good grasp, prepare yourself, not only portfolio pieces, but prepare yourself for industry jobs. Okay. So some learning paths that you can take if you're looking to step into this for the first time. Certainly we have programs that are dedicated to teach students these applications, so come check us out. Our booth is down over there. Oregon Storyboard, if you were here for Shelley's talk yesterday, has some really fun things going on, geared towards students and industry professionals alike wanting to learn more to help them in their current jobs. They're going to be VR and AR centric. They have classes starting in June that are accelerated courses that you might want to check out. And then you have some options that go online. So Pluralsight, which is formerly Digital Tutors, is a really fantastic resource for students to jump on. There's a membership involved with it. It's about $29 a month for a non-student, but as an AI student, you have access to it for free, which is really fantastic. It's going to touch base on all of the software uses that you would potentially encounter, not only in the industry, but as well as if you were going through as a student in our program. So it's going to cover Maya, it's going to cover Max, it's going to cover After Effects and Photoshop and Unity and Unreal. So it's a really good one to check out. Lynda.com is also a fantastic resource. It's anywhere between 20 and $30 a month. Then you also have Autodesk Academy, Noman Workshop, CG Society. There's some really great YouTube channels. System requirements. In terms of running Maya, you can actually get away with quite a bit in terms of running Maya. 2016, 4 gigs of RAM, but I recommend more than that. You certainly don't need as beefy as a machine as you would to run a VR headset, but it helps to kind of set yourself up in terms of what you'd want for, look at what the 2016, 2017 requirements are. You can actually test out both. All right, so once you have sort of established that you want to toy with this, there's going to be different specializations within the 3D world that you could expect to go out and find work in. And when you step in as a student, we start to run you through the pipeline of what those different specializations are. And the very first thing is modeling. So have any of you out there done clay modeling, like actual hands-on? Nice, yeah. So there's a really fun translation with that. With this, you have an undo button, which is kind of nice. Yes, yes. It'll start off with something really similar to each of these pieces of very primitive geometry. All models start from something like this. Real basic, right? Nothing super complicated. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go in. We have 3 different components that make up any poly object. Utilizing and moving around those three components allows us to change the shape and thus create our models, right? So we have faces, edges, and vertices, okay? So that's a very broad overview of modeling, right? A lot of modeling really is just pushing and pulling vertices around. Those little points up here, a lot of just pushing and pulling those. Okay. Next step in the pipeline is texturing. So creating realistic materials or stylized materials that you can take your grayscale model, apply it, and really start to give it life. So this is an example of a student piece. Started off with something very simple like a cube, right? And created each of these shapes. And to begin with, it's grayscale. It's going to look a lot like clay. Once you get to the texturing component and you start to add colors, then it really begins to come to life, right? Next step in the pipeline, lighting, right? It's that art of creating artistic or real-world lighting scenarios. It's going to give us a lot of information about the type of environment, location, time of day, mood. There's a lot of storytelling that happens in the lighting component. It's actually one of my favorite aspects of working within 3D. So you can see a sample here, okay, of how this starts to come to life with the addition of lights. Okay. Another specialization is rigging. So just like in reality, right, we're able to move because we have a skeletal structure under our skin. Same thing applies in 3D. So once a modeler creates these objects, they're then passed off to a rigger, right? Go through the texturing process, pass off to a rigger. That rigger is then going to create the skeletal structure for that particular piece of geometry, and then the animators can then move it. So the next natural step would be animation, right? Making things move, making characters act. Just about everything you can think of in Maya is keyable, meaning you can animate it. So you can animate textures, you can animate lights. We talk about, particularly in our advanced lighting and texturing courses, we talk about different ways to fake effects by animating textures and just lights, right? You can do quite a bit. These are some samples of past student productions at the Art Institute that have gone on and done some animated shorts. Okay. Next specialization would be some effects work. So it's the art of creating effects, fire, explosion, fluids, hair and fur, physics of colliding objects. It's a really niche part of the industry. If it's something that interests you, I encourage my students to explore it because there are a lot of opportunities for this. Don't shake your head at me. I see you over there. This is a couple student samples, so let's see if I can get it to play here. Up there? There we go. This is a sample that a student did in one of the effects classes, one of my effects classes. Right? So it's the art of creating these effects. All right, so let's talk a little about Maya. So out of curiosity, how many of you have experience working in a 3D application? Okay, some of you, a good chunk of you. All right, great. So Maya specifically, good chunk of you, and I know you guys have. All right, okay, good. So it's a pretty simple, we start off really simply. In our 131 class, what I tell my students to do is start with a reference object of some kind, right? Don't just try to pull it out of your head. It is a little more challenging to do. And it's also a test to start recognizing scale and proportion. So taking and picking out different points of your object and scaling based off of that, okay? So this is actually an assignment that our first term students get. They're required to take the reference image and translate it into a CG model. Okay. Throughout a student's time at school as well, there's going to be several accompanying programs that you'll begin to experience that help with the creation of assets. So ZBrush, Substance Painter, Quixel. Eventually, you'll start working within your game engines. How many of you have ZBrush experience? Okay, a little bit less of you, a little fewer, okay. Substance Painter? That's a pretty popular one. Yeah? Okay, great. Okay, so once we have assets created, then it becomes a matter of, what's our end goal? So like I said, it could be games, it could be film and advertising, it could be VR. For VR, the next step for us is actually pretty simple. We're just starting to develop some VR components to our programs. It's at the very beginning stages, but our students have really already started developing worlds for this. It's just the next step would be then to get it functional within a headset. Create your model, you're going to export it out, pull it into Unity. Unity 5 is naturally set up to work with the Oculus headset already, which is fantastic. You simply need to go into the settings of the headset, check on to recognize unknown sources, turn on VR settings in Unity, and then you're off and running. Create a project, put your headset on, you're going. So it doesn't take a whole lot to get rocking and rolling. So before I jump to some student samples, I just want to pull up Maya so you guys can take a look at what it is. So this is the interface that students can expect to start off with out of the gate. Okay, so functioning around it is pretty simple. We talk a lot about the hotkeys. We talk about the different components of the interface itself. And then we've got poly primitives, and each one of the student samples that I'm going to show you has started off with something as very simple as this, right? So keep that in mind when I show you some of these examples, because they're pretty impressive, I think. What's that? Oh. We'll just stick with the PowerPoint then. All right, nice. I'm sorry, I was always going to do with it anyway. All right, so let's look at some student samples. So some current student samples. These are game assets from one of our very recent graduates. Okay. So really cool. On each of these two, I passed out some thumb drives yesterday. They're links to the students' ArtStation page, so if you want to check out more of their work, you can certainly jump on there and check it out. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of zip through some of this. And it's a mixture of both game assets in addition to higher poly models used for film and advertising. Okay. So this would be an example of something that was more film and advertising. But again, think about all of these starting off with something nothing more than a cube. It's pretty impressive. Yeah. This is also a recent grad. Gone off and done some really fun things. So again, you can do some stylized work, you can do photorealistic work, all within Maya. You guys can't see that. All right, that's all right. So just out of curiosity, are there any questions? I know there's some of you who I currently have as students, so you're off limits. But any of you who are not currently AI students have questions about the program? What's that? Maya specific, how do you use it? That's a very big question. Do you have something a little bit more? So, in terms of how you use it, do you mean like in terms of what you could do with it, or do you mean like specifics like hotkeys?
So I have dabbled in 3D modeling a bit, and as you said, it's a lot about pushing vertices around.
Yeah, it really is.
I ended up doing that on an individual basis, so it was very tedious and a lot of create a vertex and then create a face from it, move it where I wanted it to be, and like very meticulous one by one, point by point type of modeling. And I really wanted to get it into something a little less, or a little more organic, I guess. Process than that kind of thing.
So one of the routes that you can take. So the first thing I would say is if you're modeling within Maya itself, work on a little bit larger scale. So you can select things using soft selections. You can also move multiple points, right? It's where you're removing multiple faces and points at the same time. The next natural step when you're creating assets, particularly for games, would be to get it to where you have a very foundational level in terms of your model, export it out, and then bring it into something like ZBrush. Have you played with that at all?
No, but I have used Fusion 360 a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So I have a little less experience with Fusion. I know sort of some base stuff. But if you get a program like ZBrush or even Mudbox, it's going to give you much more finite control in terms of organic modeling. So you're going to be able to go in and create really subtle details that are very challenging to get in a program like Maya or Max. So things like scars and facial pores and ripples in clothing. And then what you would do is you would take that mesh, you take basically a dumbed down version of that mesh and you would apply all of those details via texture map. Yeah. So, but you can go a long way within Maya itself without having to pull things out of the interface. It just kind of depends on what specifically you're modeling. More specifically, if you're modeling hard surfaces, it gets a little bit easier the more you do it. So
like I try to like loft and extrude and all that kind of stuff, and like chamfer and bevel, and I can never really get it to do what I want to do.
Okay.
So it's like it seems so simple. It's like I just want to chop this edge off like right along here, and it just seems like it's something so intuitive that the software is like, no, you can't do that here. I don't know what you're talking about.
You can, yes, you can. So after this too, why don't I get you my contact information? This kind of stuff, these are all perfect questions, and it's all things that we work through with our first year students. So if you were to step into a program, one of our programs right out of the gate, you'd get answers to those questions within your first 2 weeks. Boom, 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 you'd be done. Off and rocking, yeah. So on an individual basis, I'm always happy to help students and non-students alike. So if you have a very specific question with a project that you're working on, feel free to send me that information. I'd be happy to kind of work you through it initially, right? I'd also recommend, something like a digital tutors if you're just trying to dabble in it to get a feel. It's worth the $29 a month if you're, looking to see if it's going to be something for you long term. And you're going to have access. You can cancel your subscription at any point. Right, but for the sake of a month, you have access to this repository of thousands of tutorials, and what I'd recommend for you would be an introduction to Maya tutorial, and it's going to walk you through maybe 5 hours of instruction, and you can do, pause it, bookmark it. It's a lot of really fantastic information, and for our classes, I encourage our students to use it as an additional learning tool with it, in addition to what we're instructing. So it's a nice supplemental to that, and it'll get you off and running so that when you do step into a classroom environment, it's not overwhelming. Make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
I just had a general question about the assets you guys create in your classes. Do you put them up in the Udemy store, or do you guys have a repository for them for people to use, or do students place them somewhere that someone can grab to play with in the games, like in Unity? Or?
This would be something that would be up to the individual student. As the school itself, we don't keep a repository of student work for others to nab. But I do know some of the students take it a step further and create downloadable materials from their personal websites, often directed from their ArtStation. But again, it's really dictated by the individual artist. Yeah, it's a good question.
Hello.
Hi.
What would you say is a good process for starting a model?
For starting what?
For starting a model.
For starting a model?
Yeah.
Very first thing, get some reference material. So a lot of times what I'll see students do, they'll have something in their head and they want to put it into 3D. And it's really hard at the very beginning especially to just regurgitate it into a 3D environment. So when I say reference, it could be an image that you find like on Google or elsewhere, like an actual photo. It could be something that's drawn out. And then from there, you really are starting with something as simple as a cube. Identify something on your model that you can begin with from a base primitive, like what I just showed. And then really from there, it is just a matter of making cuts so that you can start extruding faces out, and you're literally just moving vertices around to get the shape. You can actually pull your reference material into Maya to use, which is another good way to start for first-time users if your eyes aren't quite trained in terms of building to scale and proportion. Does that make sense? So every artist has a little bit different method that they use in order to get started and get rolling, and the tool sets that they use will vary. One thing I tell my students is there's 100 different ways to do the same thing in Maya, and that is the exciting thing and also the very frustrating thing for first-time users. But once you find something that works for you, you want to roll with it. So hopefully that answers your question, but without me pulling up the interface, it's a little harder for me to
Thank you.
show you. Did that answer that question? Yeah, okay.
Hello. I have a question about using Maya and exporting a Revit file or Revit
Okay.
into Maya, so like for instance, if I work on a building in Revit and I export that Revit file into Maya,
Okay.
can I then animate that? Like for instance, peel back certain layers, like certain wall types to expose framework or
Okay.
plumbing or fire.